The night I saw the $9,400 charge, I was sitting alone at my kitchen table, paying the electric bill with my old laptop. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock above the stove. I remember the smell of reheated coffee and leftover chicken, and how my hands were just a little shaky from a long day. I almost clicked log out from my online banking, like I always do, when a notification popped up on the screen. New credit card transaction. $9,400. At first, I thought it was some kind of glitch. $9,400? I even cleaned my glasses with the edge of my pajama sleeve and leaned closer, the blue light reflecting in the lenses. But there it was, clear as day. Wild Ridge Motors, $9,400, pending. My heart started beating in my ears. Motors. That sounded like cars, not groceries. Funny thing is, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that earlier that afternoon, my son Daniel had kissed me on the cheek, grabbed my credit card from the little ceramic bowl by the front door and said, "Mom, I'll pick up groceries for you. You shouldn't be walking around so much with your knee." I had smiled and thanked him. I even told him to get himself something extra. "A treat," I said. "Maybe that fancy coffee you like. You work hard." Have you ever realized, in one sharp breath, that the person you'd lay down your life for might be using you? My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68, widowed, with a left knee that complains every time it rains, and a heart that still thinks it's 30 when it comes to my children. I live in a small, single-story house in a quiet neighborhood where the mail still comes in a metal box at the curb and the neighbor's dog barks at every passing bicycle. I wasn't always alone here. For 39 years, this was our house, mine and Frank's. He worked at the post office, and I did a little of everything: waitressing, cleaning houses, sewing alterations. We raised 2 children here, Daniel, my oldest, and Emily, my youngest. I sewed their Halloween costumes at this very table. We ate birthday cakes here, blew out candles, helped with math homework I barely understood. Frank passed away 8 years ago, heart attack in the middle of mowing the lawn. One minute he was cursing at the mower, and the next minute, I was holding his hand on the driveway, screaming his name while the neighbor called 911. Sometimes, when the mower starts up next door, I still jump. After he died, the bills didn't stop. Funny how life does that. Grief doesn't give you a discount on electricity or insurance. I learned to live on his pension, my Social Security, and a small life insurance policy that I stretched as far as I could. I made spreadsheets. Can you believe that? A woman who once wrote grocery lists on the back of old envelopes, learning to use Excel. I kept every receipt, every statement, each neatly tucked into labeled folders: mortgage, utilities, medical, credit card. My little paper soldiers keeping order in a war I never asked to fight. I thought being careful would protect me. Gomit, I thought love would too. Daniel has always been charming. That's the word people use. As a boy, he knew how to smile just right to get an extra cookie from his grandmother. As a teenager, he borrowed the car and brought it back with the gas tank on empty and a new scratch near the bumper. But he'd walk in with flowers from the gas station and say, "Don't be mad, Mom. You're too pretty to frown." And I wasn't mad. Not really. I told myself he would grow out of it. Emily did. She grew into the kind of woman who keeps her own files and triple checks her monthly statements. She moved 2 states away, married a quiet man named Robert, and calls me every Sunday evening. Sometimes her voice sounds tired, but steady, responsible. I know that sound well. Daniel, on the other hand, stayed close. Physically, at least. He works in sales, which he explains with so many words that I suspect even he doesn't fully understand what he sells. He'll show up at my house unannounced, kiss my cheek, eat leftovers from my fridge, and stretch out on the couch like he's still 17. Mom, you know I'll take care of you when you're old, he says jokingly, not noticing that I am already old. 6 months ago, he asked if he could temporarily use my credit card for gas and groceries. I'm between commissions, he said. They're holding my check. You know how it is with sales. I'll pay you back as soon as it comes in. You won't even notice. I promise. I hesitated. My credit card is my safety net. I don't use it much, only for emergencies, like when the roof leaked last year and the deductible nearly wiped me out. But he looked tired, and those brown eyes of his still reminded me of the toddler who had once slipped his tiny hand into mine before crossing the road. I told him yes. At first, it was small things, $42 at the grocery store, $28 at the gas station. I would log into my account every Friday, my money check-in day, I call it. I'd see the charges, write them down in my little notebook, and tell myself, he'll pay me back when he can. He's my son. Some weeks, he'd hand me a crumpled $50 bill and say, "Here, Mom, for the groceries." I'd put it in an envelope labeled "From Daniel" and tuck it into my desk drawer, feeling a small rush of relief. See? He's trying. But slowly, the amounts grew. $89, $130, $210. Restaurants I'd never heard of, coffee shops I'd never visited, a bar tab once disguised under a fancy name that I had to Google. I felt a little sting then, but I swallowed it. Maybe he took a client out, I mumbled to myself. Salespeople do that, right? Have you ever noticed how easily we lie to ourselves when the truth would hurt too much? That day, the day of the $9,400 charge, I had just finished marking due dates on my calendar. The water bill, the property tax notice, my Medicare supplement premium, my checkbook, my reading glasses, and a mug with a chip on the rim were spread out like old friends. I clicked over to the credit card site to see if Daniel's latest grocery run had gone through. I wanted to make sure there was enough to pay at least more than the minimum. I've always believed in paying more than the minimum. And there it was, that notification, that number, $9,400. My first thought was, this has to be fraud. My second thought was, Daniel has my card. I stared at the merchant name again. Wild Ridge Motors. It sounded like a place where young men buy toys they can't afford. My hand reached automatically for my phone. I opened the Messages app and scrolled to Daniel's name. Our last text was from him, sent a week ago. "You're the best, Mom. Couldn't do this without you." There was a little heart emoji at the end. I set the phone down, then picked it up again. My thumb hovered over the call button, but instead I tapped on the banking app, then on the credit card account, just to make sure. I checked the date, checked the time, checked the pending status. It was real. I could feel something inside me shifting, like furniture scraping across an old wooden floor. For the first time in a very, very long time, I did not tell myself a comforting lie. I did not say, he must have made a mistake. I did not say, the bank will fix it. Instead, I whispered into my empty kitchen, he used me. And once I said it out loud, I couldn't unsay it. I reached for my accordion folder, the one labeled financial, and pulled out the last 6 months of statements. Pages rustled like dry leaves. I laid them out in front of me, one by one, a little army of numbers and dates waiting to testify. If I was going to understand what my son had really done, I would have to let the documents speak. I didn't sleep that night. I left the statements spread out on the kitchen table like a crime scene and made a fresh pot of coffee. I had no business drinking at 11 p.m. The first thing I noticed was how often Daniel had used my card late at night. 11:42 p.m., 12:18 a.m., 1:07 a.m. in gas stations, food delivery apps, bars that called themselves lounges. I traced the dates with my finger. Nights when I had gone to bed after hearing his car peel away from my driveway, assuming he was going home. I pulled out my little spiral notebook where I jot down every time he says, "I'll pay you back Friday," or "My commission hits on the 15th." I'd written his promises next to hearts and exclamation marks, like some silly schoolgirl. On the same dates, the statements told the truth. $89, $52 here, $203.10 there, all on my card. None of it paid back. Have you ever looked at your own handwriting and felt embarrassed for the woman who wrote it? I opened my banking app again, zooming in on the $9,400 charge. I tapped it and saw the details. Wild Ridge Motors, POS purchase, Maplewood, OH. Maplewood was across town, near the highway. I'd never even been there. I finally called the number on the back of the card. The automated voice asked for my account number, my date of birth, the last 4 digits of my social security. I answered carefully, my voice barely above a whisper, as if the phone could judge me. "Press 1 if you'd like to dispute a transaction," the recording said. My finger hovered over the 1, then pulled back. If I said it was fraud, what would that make my own son? A stranger? A thief? When the system offered to connect me to a live representative, I hung up. Instead, I called Daniel. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice a little too cheerful. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm looking at my credit card statement." There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear his car blinker clicking in the background. "Yeah? I filled the fridge for you." "Did you see the yogurt you like?" "There's a charge here," I continued. "Wild Ridge Motors, $9,400. The clicking stopped. I pictured him, hand frozen on the steering wheel. "Oh, that," he said, breezy, like I'd asked about the weather. "Yeah, don't worry, Mom. It's not what it looks like." My grip tightened around the phone. "Then what is it?" "It's just a temporary hold," he said quickly. "For work, a client thing. They're gonna reverse it. It's like when a hotel puts a hold on your card, you know? It's not real." I know what a hotel hold looks like. Frank and I used to drive to the lake once a year and stay at a cheap motel. The hold was usually $50, not $9,400. "They put the hold on my card," I repeated slowly. "Only for a couple days," Daniel said. "I needed a card with a good limit to make it look legit. You're not gonna have to pay it. I swear. My commission is coming. This is how the deal works." "Then why didn't you ask me?" I whispered. He exhaled. "Mom, you worry too much. I knew you'd freak out. And it's really nothing. I'm doing this for us. Big sale. I'll be able to help you more, okay? Just don't call the bank, all right? It'll mess it up." There it was, that little twist of words that turned my concern into sabotage. Don't call, don't look, don't question. I'm doing this for you. I hung up not long after, but his sentences kept circling my mind, like gnats around a porch light. Temporary hold. For us. Don't call the bank. I walked back to the table and sat down. I've learned something over the years. When someone tells you not to look at something, that's exactly what you need to look at. I pulled my reading lamp closer and started going through old envelopes I kept in a shoebox, receipts I'd stuffed away without thinking. Gas, groceries, the pharmacy. I found a crumpled receipt from a sporting goods store dated 3 months ago for $420.58. Hockey equipment. I don't play hockey. On my statement for that same date, there it was. Sports Unlimited, $420.58. Daniel had called that day, I remembered now, saying, "Hey, Mom, can you spot me for a prescription? Insurance messed up. I'll pay you back Friday." Friday had come and gone. Like so many others, My phone buzzed with a text. It was Emily. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. You okay? I woke up thinking about you." My eyes stung. I typed back, "I'm fine, honey. Just going through bills." Then I erased the word fine because it felt like a lie and wrote, "I'm a little overwhelmed with some charges. I'll call you tomorrow." I didn't send it. I just let the words sit there on the screen, unsent, like a confession I wasn't ready to make. Instead, I opened my email. I typed Wild Ridge Motors in the search bar, just in case something had been sent to me. To my surprise, there it was, an email from an address I didn't recognize in my inbox from earlier that evening. Subject: Thank you for your purchase. Wild Ridge Motors. My finger trembled as I clicked it open. The email was polite, professional, with a logo at the top and a list of details below. Purchase amount, partial VIN number, estimated pickup date. It congratulated Mr. Daniel Carter on his new motorcycle. They had sent the receipt to my email because it was my card. I leaned back in my chair, the old wood creaking under me. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn blew, low and lonely. That was the moment the story changed for me. Not from, "my son is struggling," to, "my son made a mistake," but to something colder, sharper. My son had made a purchase he didn't tell me about, using a card he had promised was just for groceries and gas. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something rise up inside me that wasn't guilt or worry. It was a quiet, steady anger. I woke up the next morning with that same quiet anger sitting in my chest like a warm stone. Not raging, not explosive, just solid. I made oatmeal, but I barely tasted it. My mind kept drifting back to the email from Wild Ridge Motors. That shiny new motorcycle Daniel had bought with my credit card, while telling me he was buying yogurt and bread. After breakfast, I printed everything: the email, the receipt attached, the credit card statements from the last 6 months. My old printer groaned through each page like it resented being part of this story too. There's something grounding about holding evidence in your hands. Paper doesn't lie to you. It doesn't smooth things over. It doesn't ask you to just trust it. Have you ever felt a strange comfort in the cold truth? I sat at the dining table with my papers stacked neatly. I took a deep breath and dialed the number for Wild Ridge Motors. A young-sounding woman answered. "Sales department, this is Rachel. How can I help you?" "Hello, dear," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm calling about a purchase made yesterday under the name Daniel Carter, using my credit card. I'm the card holder." There was typing, a pause. "Yes, ma'am, the motorcycle purchase. Congratulations?" It felt like someone had slapped me with a polite smile. "I did not authorize that purchase," I said. "And I need to know if the bike has been picked up." "Not yet, ma'am," she said. "Pickup is scheduled for Monday morning. He signed the sales contract digitally, and it shows your card as the payment source." "And the signature?" I asked. "Is it mine?" Another pause. "It appears to be Daniel Carter's signature. But the card, yes, it's registered to a Margaret Carter." I pressed the speaker button and laid the phone beside the papers. "Is there a way to get a copy of the signed contract?" I asked. "I can email it to you." "Please do." A minute later, my inbox pinged. I opened the PDF, and there it was, Daniel's sloppy signature, almost identical to the one he used on birthday cards. Under it, in bold letters, was the statement, "I certify that I am authorized to use this payment method." Authorized. I almost laughed. Or cried. Or both. When I hung up, I called the credit card company again. This time, I pressed 1 for disputes. The representative's voice was gentle, like she'd done this 1,000 times. "Ma'am, this charge is quite large," she said. "Are you certain you did not authorize it?" "Yes," I said firmly, and I have documents to support my claim. She opened a fraud case, gave me a reference number, and told me I might need to file a police report. The words didn't sting the way I thought they would. Maybe because deep down, a part of me already knew where this road was leading. After the call, I took a shower, put on a clean blouse, and brushed my hair into something presentable. I looked at myself in the mirror, 68, lines around my eyes, a softness around my chin Frank used to kiss. I looked tired, yes, but also resolute. Around noon, Daniel knocked on my door without texting me first. He let himself in like he always did, calling out, "Mom, you home?" I stayed at the table, papers spread neatly. When he saw them, he froze. "What's all that?" "Evidence," I said quietly. He laughed, but it sounded thin. "Mom, come on. You're making this bigger than—" "Sit down, Daniel." He sat. His knee bounced nervously. I slid the printed receipt toward him. He didn't touch it. "I talked to Wild Ridge Motors," I said. "They sent me the contract. You signed it." He swallowed hard. "Mom, I told you, it's a hold. It's how sales works. I just needed a card with room." "It's not a hold," I said. "It's a purchase, a motorcycle, for yourself." His jaw tightened. "Okay, fine. Yes, I bought it, but I was going to pay you back, I swear." "With what money?" I asked softly. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I took a breath. "Daniel, do you know how much you've charged on my card in the last 6 months?" Silence. $4,873, I said. "Before the motorcycle." His face paled. "I didn't realize. You didn't want to realize." He blinked at me. Then the anger came, the kind that tries to rewrite the story. "I was helping you, Mom. Gas, groceries, you needed—" "Don't," I said. "Not this time." That stopped him. For the first time in years, my voice carried weight. "I opened a fraud case. The bank may contact you." He pushed back from the table. "Mom, you can't. This will ruin me." I stood slowly, my knees aching. "No, Daniel, you did this. I'm just finally acknowledging it." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. "Mom, please, don't go to the police." I felt my heart twist, but I didn't let it show. "I will cooperate with whatever the bank requires," I said simply. "If they ask for a police report, I will file one." Daniel stood there breathing hard. His eyes were glossy, not from remorse, but from fear. Then he stormed out. The door slammed so hard, a picture frame rattled on the wall. When he was gone, I placed every document into a clean, new folder labeled Dispute, Credit Card. I sat down, folded my hands, and let the house settle into silence. Somewhere inside me, something old and soft was starting to harden. Not cruelly, but like a bone finally setting right after years of healing wrong. The weekend felt unusually long and strangely quiet. Daniel didn't call, not even a text. I kept checking my phone out of habit, expecting to see his name pop up with some rushed apology or half-baked explanation. But nothing came. Silence can be its own kind of answer, can't it? I spent Saturday morning organizing the dispute folder. I added sticky notes, highlighted dates, and printed out screenshots from my banking app showing every questionable charge. The more I organized, the clearer the pattern became. Not chaos, not mistakes, a routine, a habit, maybe even a lifestyle. By noon, I realized I needed advice, not emotional advice. I'd had plenty of that over the years. I needed someone who understood procedures, filings, the rules. So, I looked up a local legal aid office. Free consultations for seniors. I made an appointment for Monday. Sunday morning, Emily called right on schedule. "Hi, Mom. How are you? You sound tired in your text yesterday." My heart tightened. Emily always hears the things I don't say. "I'm managing," I said. "Just dealing with some financial issues." "What kind of issues?" I hesitated. I wasn't ready to unload everything. Not yet. Not until I had solid information, not just hurt. "Some unusual charges," I said softly. "I'm looking into them." "Do you need help?" Those 4 words made my eyes sting. I grabbed a tissue, pretending I was just wiping my glasses. "I'll let you know," I said. "Thank you, sweetheart." After we hung up, I sat at the table and opened the PDF from Wild Ridge Motors again. There was a section I'd skimmed the first time. ID, verification required at pickup. The buyer had to show a valid driver's license that matched the signature. Well, Daniel's name matched the signature. But the card was mine, and the email listed me as the payer. It made me wonder, if I showed up first with the fraud reference number and my documents, what would they say? That thought simmered in my mind all afternoon. On Monday, I put on my nicest sweater, navy blue, the one Frank used to say made my eyes look kind, and took the folder to the legal aid office. The receptionist offered me a cup of hot tea while I waited. Chamomile. The scent wrapped around me like a warm blanket. A young attorney named Mr. Harris invited me into his office. He couldn't have been older than 35, but he listened with the patience of someone twice that age. I spread out my papers across his desk, just like I had at home. "Your son used your card without permission?" he asked gently. "He said it was for groceries, for necessities. I trusted him," he nodded. "And this motorcycle purchase, did you sign anything approving it?" "No." "That helps," he said. "The fact that he signed your card's authorization statement is a serious issue. It's not just misuse, it's misrepresentation." The word stung. Misrepresentation. A polite term for something uglier. "What happens now?" I asked. "Well," he said carefully, "you're doing the right thing by opening a dispute. The bank may ask you to submit a police report. That doesn't always lead to charges, but it creates a legal record. It strengthens your case." "And Wild Ridge Motors?" I asked. "They cannot legally release the motorcycle if the payment is under dispute. If you show up with documentation, ideally before your son does, you can stop the pickup entirely." I felt a strange sensation then, something between dread and power. "So I should go there," I said. "I would," he replied. "Bring your folder, speak calmly, show them the fraud case number." Calmly. That part I could do. When I left his office, I drove slowly through town. The sky was gray, heavy with the hint of rain. My hands shook a little on the steering wheel, but it wasn't fear. It was resolve. Wild Ridge Motors was on the edge of Maplewood, a glass front building with shiny bikes lined up like soldiers on display. The parking lot was half full. I sat in my car for a minute, breathing in and out, grounding myself. Then I grabbed my folder and walked in. The showroom smelled like rubber and metal polish. A salesman in a leather jacket approached with a bright smile. "Afternoon, ma'am. Looking for a bike?" "No," I said. "I'm here about a purchase made in my name." He led me to the customer service desk, where a manager, a tall man named Greg, listened as I explained everything. I slid each document across the counter with steady hands. The dispute number, the email, the contract with Daniel's signature, my ID. Greg frowned, his expression shifting from polite to concerned. "Ma'am," he said, "if what you're telling me is correct, we cannot release the motorcycle to anyone. This sale will be put on hold immediately." He typed something into the computer, then printed a form. "This acknowledges that you've disputed the charge and notified us," he said. I'll sign it, and so will you. My pen moved slowly but firmly across the paper. Will my son be notified? I asked. If he comes to pick up the bike, we'll inform him the sale is frozen due to a payment investigation, and we'll direct him to you or the bank. I closed my folder and nodded. Thank you, I said quietly. As I walked back to my car, the first drops of rain began to fall. Soft, cold, cleansing. Sitting behind the wheel, I let myself feel the weight of it all. Not just the money, not just the lie, but the long years of motherly excuses that had led us here. Have you ever realized too late that love without boundaries becomes permission? That afternoon, I drove home without turning on the radio. I didn't need noise. I needed clarity, and I was finally starting to have it. When I pulled into my driveway that afternoon, Daniel's car was already there, parked crookedly, like he'd rushed in. My stomach tightened. I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, letting the rain drum softly on the roof of my car. I wasn't ready, but I also wasn't afraid anymore. Inside, Daniel was pacing the living room. The moment he saw me, he pointed. Mom, what did you do? I set my purse down slowly. I went to Wild Ridge Motors. His face flushed. Why would you do that? I told you I had it under control. You weren't honest with me, I said. I needed the truth. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. They said the purchase is frozen. They said you filed a dispute. Do you realize what that means for me at work? This deal was supposed to— You used my card for a motorcycle, I interrupted. A motorcycle, Daniel. Without asking. After months of lying. He clenched his jaw. I was going to pay you back. When? I asked softly. He didn't answer. I walked past him into the kitchen and began making tea, not to drink, but because the act steadied me. I pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, though I already knew he wouldn't stay long enough to drink anything. He followed me, voice rising. You didn't have to embarrass me. I turned to him. You didn't have to steal from me. The word hung in the air, steal. I'd never used that word with him before. Daniel flinched, but anger quickly replaced the hurt. Mom, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Families help each other. You always said that. Yes, I said. Help, not take advantage, not deceive. He kicked lightly at the bottom of the cabinet, a nervous tic from childhood. So what now? You want me arrested? Is that it? No, I said calmly, but I will follow the process. Whatever the bank needs, I'll do. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. His shoulders tensed. I saw the panic growing. You don't understand what this does to my job, he muttered. And you don't understand what this does to my life, I replied. If that charge had gone through, if I hadn't checked my statement, Daniel, it would have wiped out my savings. I could have lost the house. He looked genuinely startled. It's not that serious. It is, I said. And it always was. Silence, only the ticking clock filled the space. I set the folder on the kitchen table. I kept every receipt, every promise you made, every date you said you'd repay me. He stared at the folder like it was a bomb. This isn't about one mistake, I continued. It's a pattern, one I allowed because I loved you. He swallowed hard. So what, now? I'm the villain. Daniel, I said gently. You're not a villain, but you're a grown man who made a series of choices, and choices have consequences. His shoulders slumped, not in remorse, but in defeat. I just needed a win, Mom. One big win. At my expense? I asked. He didn't respond. I knew in that moment that he wasn't ready to change. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. He grabbed his keys. I can't deal with this right now. As he stepped toward the door, I said, Daniel? He stopped. I love you, I said softly, but I won't let you walk over me anymore. His eyes flickered, hurt, confusion, anger, all fighting for space. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. The house fell quiet again. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the soft crackle of the kettle cooling. Later that evening, I gathered every document again and reviewed the next steps from the bank's website. I wrote down timelines, phone numbers, and case details in my notebook. My handwriting was steadier this time. Around 7 p.m., the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Carter?" a woman asked. "This is Officer Lynn from the Maplewood Police Department. We received an inquiry related to a dispute involving your credit card. We'd like to confirm some details with you." My heart skipped, but my voice stayed calm. "Of course, officer. What do you need?" "We're not opening a case yet," she said, "but the bank asked us to document your statement for their investigation. You can come in tomorrow morning." Just like that, it was real. Not emotional real. Legal real. "Thank you," I said. After I hung up, I sat on the couch and let myself feel the weight of everything. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the strange sense of relief that comes when the truth finally stops hiding. Have you ever noticed how clarity can hurt and soothe at the same time? I looked around my little living room, the crocheted blanket over the sofa, the framed picture of Frank on the mantel, the soft lamp that gave everything a warm glow. This was my life, my home, my safe place, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I was finally protecting it. That night, I slept with the dispute folder on the nightstand beside me, not because I was afraid, but because it reminded me of something I had forgotten. My boundaries mattered, and I was finally learning how to defend them. The next morning, the sky was a cold, flat gray, the kind that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. I ate a quick breakfast, put on a clean cardigan, and slipped the dispute folder into my tote bag. My hands were steady, my heart beat, calm. It surprised me. At the Maplewood Police Department, the lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and old carpet. A young receptionist directed me to a small interview room. Inside, Officer Lynn greeted me with a polite, almost gentle smile. She looked to be in her early 40s, a woman with tired eyes but a steady posture. "Mrs. Carter, thank you for coming in," she said. "We just need a clear record of what happened." I nodded and placed my folder on the table. "I brought all my documents." She seemed relieved. That helps a lot. Many people come unprepared. For the next half hour, I told her everything, calmly, factually. I showed her the statements, the motorcycle receipt, the printed contract with Daniel's signature. She examined each page carefully, marking notes on a small legal pad. "So your son used your card without permission," she said gently, "and misrepresented himself as an authorized cardholder in order to make a high-value purchase." "Yes." "And you did not give him consent to use your credit card for anything other than small groceries or gas." "That's correct." She paused her writing and looked up at me. "Mrs. Carter, are you afraid of him?" Her question hit me hard, not because I was afraid, but because I realized she needed to ask it, because many mothers probably answered yes. "No," I said softly. "I'm not afraid. I'm disappointed and tired." She nodded. "I understand." When we finished, she handed me a copy of my statement. "This will assist the bank's investigation. We're not pressing charges unless you choose to pursue them, or unless the bank does. But it's on record now." As I walked out, the cold air hit my face, crisp and sharp. My breath came out in a small white cloud. I felt lighter somehow, like telling the truth had opened a window inside me. On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store. I bought apples, oatmeal, and a bouquet of daisies. Frank used to bring daisies home on payday. I placed them in the passenger seat beside me, and for a moment, I imagined him there, smiling that patient smile. When I got home, there was a single voicemail on my phone. Daniel. Mom, I heard the police contacted you. I don't understand why you're doing this. I said I'd fix it. Call me back. His voice was tight, defensive, almost wounded, but there was no apology, no ownership. I set the phone down without calling him back. Instead, I spent the afternoon sorting through old files. I found pictures from when the kids were young, Frank holding Daniel on his shoulders at the county fair, Emily laughing with cotton candy in her hand. I traced their faces with my thumb, feeling a tug of grief for the years I can't return to. Have you ever looked at an old picture and wished you could warn your younger self about what was coming? Around 5 p.m., there was a knock on the door. My heart jumped. For a moment, I thought it might be Daniel. But when I opened the door, it was my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, holding a small casserole dish. I made too much, she said with a warm smile. Thought you might like some. Kindness has a way of arriving when you least expect it. We chatted for a few minutes, nothing deep, just recipes and weather and how her grandkids were doing. After she left, I placed the casserole in the fridge and sat down at the kitchen table. I stared at the dispute folder for a long moment before finally closing it, binding the elastic strap around it. I realized then that the folder no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a boundary, a shield. Later that evening, the bank emailed me. Your dispute has been escalated. Please allow 7-10 business days for review. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a step. I made myself a cup of tea and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel lonely. Not tonight. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing up for the woman Frank believed I was. The one he'd always told the kids to respect. The one I had forgotten how to be. As I sipped my tea, I whispered into the room, I'm getting there, Frank, bit by bit. And the quiet felt like an answer. The next few days moved slowly, like thick honey. I kept myself busy, laundry, pruning the rose bushes, reorganizing the drawer, where I keep warranties and appliance manuals. Anything to keep my mind steady. But underneath it all was a quiet awareness. Daniel still hadn't come by. On Thursday afternoon, as I was folding towels, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Carter, this is Greg from Wild Ridge Motors. We need to update you on the status of the disputed purchase. Please call when you can. My stomach fluttered, but not from fear, more like anticipation. I dialed immediately. Mrs. Carter, Greg said, just wanted to let you know that your son came in this morning to pick up the motorcycle. My breath caught. And? He became upset when we informed him the sale was frozen. He asked to speak to the person who filed the dispute, but we explained it was confidential. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. I could picture Daniel, frustrated, desperate, scrambling for control. Thank you for holding the sale, I said. I appreciate your professionalism. There's more, Greg continued. He tried to argue that the cardholder, meaning you, gave permission, but when we asked for written proof or a signed authorization, he couldn't provide anything. We documented the encounter. Documented, I repeated softly. Good. After I hung up, I set the phone down and pressed my palms to the counter. My chest felt tight, not with pain, but with the strain of being torn between two truths, the son I raised and the man he had become. An hour later, Daniel finally texted. So you're really doing this to me, after everything I've done for you? I stared at the words until they blurred. Everything he's done for me. I thought of the broken promises, the borrowed money, the late-night withdrawals from my emotional well-being. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Eventually, I wrote, "We will speak when you are calm and ready to talk honestly. I pressed send. Immediately, 3 dots appeared. He was typing. Then they disappeared. He didn't respond. That evening, I made myself a small dinner. Grilled chicken, steamed green beans. I turned on the radio, letting soft instrumental music fill the room. But the moment I sat down, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. Not physical, emotional. Have you ever felt tired all the way to your bones? The kind of tired that comes from years of carrying things alone? After dinner, I decided to take a walk. The weather had softened into a cool spring breeze. I wore my light jacket and walked down the familiar streets of my neighborhood. Houses glowed with warm porch lights. Somewhere a dog barked. A couple jogged past me smiling. Their energy felt like electricity. When I reached the small park at the end of the block, I sat on a bench beneath a maple tree. The branches swayed gently above me. The air smelled like damp soil and early blossoms. 2 teenagers sat on swings nearby, laughing about something silly. Their joy felt innocent, unburdened. Watching them, I felt a pang of longing, not for youth, but for simplicity. I whispered into the air, "Where did I go wrong, Frank?" Of course, there was no answer, but saying it out loud made something inside me loosen. As I walked home, I realized something important. The police report, the bank dispute, Wild Ridge Motors. They weren't just about money or fraud. They were about reclaiming the smallest, quietest parts of myself that I had given away piece by piece. Back home, I made a chamomile tea and sat at the table. I opened my notebook and wrote, "What I can control. My boundaries, my finances, my decisions, how I respond. What I cannot control. Daniel's choices, his anger, his lies, his growth." Seeing it in writing steadied me. Around 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. My heart briefly hiccuped in my chest. I stood slowly and walked to the door, peering through the peephole. It wasn't Daniel. It was a police officer, standing stoically on my porch. My breath caught as I opened the door. "Good evening, officer." "Mrs. Carter?" he asked. "I'm Officer Ramirez. May I come in for a moment?" "Yes, of course." He stepped inside, removing his hat out of respect. "I'm here to let you know we logged the statement you gave Officer Lynn. The bank requested verification." I nodded. "I understand." "There's something else," he added carefully. "Your son came by the station earlier." My knees went weak, but I stayed upright. "What did he say?" "He attempted to preemptively dispute your claim, but when we asked for evidence of authorization, he didn't have any. He became agitated." I closed my eyes briefly. "We advised him to calm down and contact the bank. He left without incident." "Thank you for telling me," I said softly. Officer Ramirez gave me a sympathetic look. "You're doing the right thing, ma'am. It's never easy when family is involved." He left, and I stood at the door for a long moment after it closed, listening to the quiet tick of the hallway clock. When I finally returned to the kitchen, I placed my hand on the dispute folder. My fingers no longer shook. As I turned off the lights and headed toward my bedroom, I thought, sometimes strength doesn't look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like standing still when someone else expects you to crumble. And I was still standing. The next morning began with a soft knock on my door. Gentle, hesitant. For a moment, I froze, my mind jumping to Daniel. But when I opened the door, it was Emily, standing there with her overnight bag and worry written all over her face. "Mom," she breathed, pulling me into a hug before I could say a word. "You should have told me." My hands trembled as I held her. "I didn't want you to worry." "I am worried," she whispered. "Daniel called me last night saying you were destroying his life. I knew something was wrong, so I drove up first thing." I stepped back, taking in her tired eyes, her wrinkled blouse. She must have driven through dawn. Come inside, sweetheart. Once she set her bag down, I made us coffee. She waited until I sat across from her before speaking again. Mom, what really happened? I opened the dispute folder, carefully, almost ceremonially, and slid it toward her. She read silently. I watched her shoulders rise, then stiffen, then drop as she processed each page. Oh my God, she whispered. This isn't a misunderstanding. He knew what he was doing. Yes, I said softly. He did. She looked up at me with a mix of heartbreak and anger. How long has this been going on? Months, maybe years in smaller ways. Emily reached across the table and took my hand, squeezing it firmly. Mom, why didn't you call me sooner? I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten. Because I didn't want to admit that my own son could do this. Emily's eyes glistened. You raised us to be better than this. Children choose their own paths, I said quietly. And sometimes, they walk away from the values we gave them. Have you ever realized that love alone can't guide someone who doesn't want to be guided? Emily stayed quiet for a long time. Then she straightened her back. What's the next step? The bank is reviewing the dispute, I said. The police have my statement. Wild Ridge Motors froze the sale. She nodded, absorbing everything like she always did, methodically, with purpose. Okay, she said. Then I'll stay as long as you need me. I smiled. Just for today. I'll be all right. The day passed gently with her around. We cleaned the hall closet, sorted the pantry, laughed at old photos. The house felt warmer with her in it, lighter, more alive. In the afternoon, she insisted on taking me out to lunch. We went to a little cafe downtown where the waitresses still call everyone hon. Over soup and sandwiches, she finally asked, Do you think Daniel is going to show up again? I stirred my soup slowly. Yes, eventually. And what will you say? The truth, I replied. The same truth I told him before. Later, when Emily left to return to her family, she hugged me tightly at the door. Please call if anything changes, she said. I will. After she drove away, the house felt quiet again, but not empty. Her presence had left something behind, like a warm echo. Around 6 p.m., I received an email from the bank. Additional verification required. Please upload any supporting documents. I gathered each piece, statements, receipts, the police report number, the dealership form, and uploaded them. When I pressed submit, a strange sense of finality settled over me. I had done my part. The wheels were turning now. At 7:30 p.m., the phone rang. Daniel. My hand hovered over the screen before I finally answered. Mom, he said, his voice low, slower than usual. Em talked to me. She said you showed her everything. I did, I replied. She deserved the truth. There was a pause, then unexpectedly, I'm sorry. It was quiet, fragile, like a piece of paper that could tear with one wrong move. But I didn't rush to embrace it. Not this time. Daniel, I said gently, are you sorry for what you did, or sorry you got caught? He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing. I don't know, he finally whispered. Maybe both. A sadness washed over me, deep and heavy, not sharp like before, just tired. I can't fix this for you, I said softly, and I won't lie to protect you. Mom, please, I need help. I know, I said. But help isn't covering up your actions. Help is letting you face them. There was a long pause, then a quiet click as he hung up. I sat there for a while. Phone in my lap, listening to the ticking clock and the hum of the refrigerator. That night, I made myself a cup of peppermint tea and sat on the porch. The moon was bright, the air cool, crickets singing their steady song, and I realized something. This wasn't just an unraveling, it was a rebuilding. Slowly, piece by piece, I was shaping a life where I mattered again, where my trust wasn't currency for someone else's convenience, where boundaries protected me instead of imprisoning me. Have you ever felt a calm so deep it almost scared you? As I sat under the moonlight, I finally understood. Sometimes the greatest act of love, for others and for yourself, is refusing to pretend anymore. The next week unfolded differently than I expected. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just steady, like the quiet after a long storm, when the world is still deciding whether to rain again or let the sun through. Every morning I checked my email for updates from the bank. Nothing yet. Bureaucracy moves at its own pace. But strangely, I wasn't anxious. Not the way I used to be, when every unexpected charge or letter in the mail made my heart jump. On Tuesday, I drove to the community center for my knitting group. I hadn't been in weeks, not since the mess with the credit card first began. But the moment I walked into the small room, with its mismatched chairs, humming fluorescent lights, and the gentle chatter of women my age, I felt something inside me loosen. "Maggie!" Judy called from the corner. "We haven't seen you." I smiled, settling into the chair beside her. Life got a little busy. They didn't pry. Women our age understand things without explanations. Instead, they asked about my knee, the garden, the new streetlights the city put in. We knitted, shared stitches, and traded patterns. Ordinary things, soft things. For the first time in months, I felt normal. When I got home, I found a small package on my porch. For a split second, I feared it might be something Daniel had ordered with my card. But no, the label said it was from Emily. Inside was a framed photo. Emily, her husband Robert, their 2 girls. And tucked behind the frame, a handwritten note. "Mom, I love you. You're stronger than you think. We're with you." I held the frame against my chest, letting the warmth of her words settle into my bones. That evening, I made a simple dinner, tomato soup and a grilled cheese, and watched the sunset through the kitchen window. The sky shifted from pale pink to deep violet. I thought of Frank then, not with heaviness, but with a kind of peaceful gratitude. He would have been proud of me. I could almost hear him saying, "Make good girl, Maggie. You finally stood up for yourself." On Wednesday, a letter arrived from the credit card company. My breath hitched as I opened it. Inside, it simply said, "Case under review, additional investigation pending." Not the final answer, but progress. Later that afternoon, my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, stopped by again, this time with a potted basil plant. "You mentioned you wanted to start using fresh herbs in your cooking," she said with a wink. "Thought this might help." I set the plant near the window, where the sunlight fell just right. Little moments of kindness were starting to feel like stitches in a torn quilt, slowly mending what had been frayed. But Thursday brought something I wasn't prepared for. Daniel. I heard the sound of his car door slam before he even reached the porch. I steadied myself and opened the door before he could knock. He stood there, eyes darker than usual, hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket. He looked exhausted, hollow. "Mom," he said, not angry, not defensive, just tired. "Come in," I said quietly. He stepped inside, but didn't sit. He hovered near the doorway like a man unsure whether he should stay or go. "I talked to the bank," he said. "They froze my account. My cards declined twice this week." "That's part of the process," I replied gently. "Fraud cases affect everyone involved." He stared at the floor. "I didn't think this would get so big." "You signed a contract for almost $10,000, I reminded him, using someone else's card. He winced. I know. I never wanted it to come to this," I said. "But you forced my hand." He looked up, eyes glassy, and for just a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who scraped his knee and came running to me for comfort. "Mom, I messed up," he whispered. "I know," I said softly. "But knowing isn't the same as fixing." He swallowed hard. "Can we, I don't know, make this go away? Tell the bank it was a misunderstanding?" My heart clenched, not in fear, but in sadness for how deeply he misunderstood the lesson. "No," I said. "We can't." "Why not?" he snapped. "You always fix things. You've fixed things my whole life." And that was it, wasn't it? That was the truth laid bare. "I can't fix this," I said quietly. "And I shouldn't have fixed so many things before." He began pacing. "So that's it? You're turning your back on me?" "I'm turning my back on being used," I corrected. He stopped pacing, stared at me with something like disbelief. "I'm your son." "And I love you," I said. "But love isn't a blank check." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, voice cracking. "Work is a mess. I'm behind on rent. My car payment. Mom, I'm drowning." The weight of his words fell between us like a heavy stone, but I no longer felt responsible for lifting it off him. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said gently, "but consequences are not cruelty, they're teachers." He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. I sat across from him, not beside him, not this time. After a long silence, he spoke. "Can you at least help me figure out what to do next?" "That," I said, "I can do." I grabbed a notepad and a pen. We made a list, his bills, his debts, his priorities. Not to rescue him, but to help him see the map he'd been ignoring. At one point, he looked up at me with wet eyes. "Mom, I'm scared." I reached out and gently touched his hand, not holding it, just acknowledging. "I know," I said, "but being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you ready." For the first time in a long time, he didn't pull away. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about blame, about responsibility, about rebuilding, about standing on his own legs, shaky as they were. When he finally left, he hugged me. A real hug, not a quick, guilty one. A heavy, honest one. "I'll try," he whispered. "I hope so," I said. After he drove away, I stood at the window watching the taillights fade. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I felt relieved, quietly, deeply relieved. Later that night, I made myself a small bowl of fruit and sat in the living room with only the lamp on. I watched the shadows on the wall, felt the softness of the blanket over my legs, listened to the quiet. Something inside me had shifted, subtly, but unmistakably. I wasn't the same woman who first saw the $9,400 charge. That woman was scared, unsure, afraid of losing her child, her stability, her sense of control. This woman, me now, was different. I had boundaries, I had a voice, I had support, and most importantly, I had reclaimed my dignity. Have you ever felt yourself returning to who you were always meant to be? In the soft glow of that quiet night, I finally recognized myself again. The final resolution came quietly, not with a dramatic phone call or a knock on the door, but with a simple email on a calm Thursday morning. I was sipping my coffee, watching the sunlight move across the kitchen tiles, when I heard the familiar ping from my laptop. I opened the email without expectation, and there it was. "Your claim has been approved. The disputed charge of $9,400 has been reversed." I read it twice, 3 times. My hand covered my mouth as a slow, shaky breath escaped me. The remaining unauthorized charges from the past 6 months were also flagged and credited back to my account. My balance reset, my credit restored. Just like that, the weight I'd been carrying for months, maybe years, lifted. I walked to the living room and sat on the couch, letting the news settle into my bones. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. A few hours later, Daniel texted. Bank told me the dispute went through. I guess that's it then. I read his message carefully. There was no anger in it this time. No accusations or guilt. Just acceptance. I replied, "It means we can both move forward." He didn't text back, but that was all right. Not every healing happens together. Some healings happen side by side, separately, in silence. That afternoon, I treated myself to something small, a slice of lemon pie from the bakery downtown. Frank used to love lemon pie. I sat by the window with my fork and my thoughts, letting the tart sweetness anchor me to the present. Over the next week, life settled into a gentler rhythm. I joined my knitting group again. I planted basil and rosemary in small clay pots and arranged them on the windowsill. I called Emily more often, not because I needed help, but because I wanted to share the little joys of my days. And surprisingly, Daniel began to text every few days. Not long messages, not emotional confessions, just small, real things. Got a new part-time job. I paid my overdue bill today. Had a tough day, but handled it. These messages didn't erase the past, but they showed me something important. He was walking, maybe for the first time, on his own 2 feet. One Sunday afternoon, I took a walk through the neighborhood. Children were drawing chalk suns on driveways. Fathers were mowing lawns, and the breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass. I felt a simple, quiet gratitude for my home, my life, my boundaries, my peace. On my porch, I sat with a cup of chamomile tea and watched the sky shift toward evening. The colors softened from gold to lavender, and I felt that old familiar ache, the one that asks, could things have been different if I set boundaries sooner? But the ache didn't hurt this time. It just existed, like a reminder of who I used to be and who I had become. Have you ever reached a moment and realized you weren't healing anymore? You were healed? Later that week, Daniel came by. For the first time in months, he knocked gently and waited. He looked tired, but clearer somehow, like a man who had finally faced himself. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course," I said. We sat at the dining table. No folder between us, no accusations, no defenses, just mother and son. He took a deep breath. "I'm getting help," he said. "Financial counseling. And I've been thinking about everything. What I did, what I expected from you. I'm sorry, Mom. Really sorry." This time, the words felt real. I reached out, placing my hand over his. "Thank you for saying that." "I don't expect you to trust me right away," he added. "Trust, such a fragile, powerful thing. I can trust the man you're trying to become," I said gently. "And that's enough." He smiled, small, uncertain, but hopeful. When he left, he hugged me longer than he had in years, and when his car pulled away, I felt peace, not worry. The final piece of the journey came quietly a few days later, as I sat on the porch with my knitting oig, the basil plant fragrant beside me. I looked out at the street, the world calm and steady, and realized something profound. My life finally belonged to me again. Not to guilt, not to fear, not to anyone else's choices. Just me. And that kind of the freedom, earned slowly, painfully, honestly, felt like sunrise. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, I'd be grateful if you liked and subscribed so we can share more moments like this together. And tell me, if you were in my place, what would you have done?